Good to see many of you again. Thanks, Dan and Gareth, for leading on this. Many of you are aware that I've taken a keen interest in mine energy schemes over the years, and but I'm also currently involved in something called heat network zoning for the UK government, and I thought it might be interesting for people to have a bit of a heads up on this, not just from the UK government side, but also I've had a look at obviously what the Scottish government's doing on this too. So Mark Woodward, Director of Nordic Energy. The opportunity is through the legislation changes that you'll be somewhat aware of, perhaps, but they're not finalised. They're still under development in both England, Wales, Scotland, and very much in Northern Ireland, which I think is a little bit further behind. From the UK perspective, this is contained within the Energy Act, and it's the heat networks and zoning programme. And then in there, the references for the Scottish government too, and some links here. So if you want to follow up on what I've been talking about, you can no doubt be able to access the presentation afterwards, where these references are being included. There's a very recent update on Scotland because the First Minister made it clear a couple of days ago that one of the 6 bills in Scotland will be the Heating Buildings Bill, which will contain, we understand, some requirement for non-domestic buildings to connect to heat networks. Northern Ireland is a little bit further behind, as I understand it, from a legislative process on any initiative like this, but they have a relatively small mine energy community. There's a couple of former mines in Northern Ireland only, and they're in relatively small communities. But as we've heard today, there's plenty of opportunity in smaller communities to make mine energy schemes work. So coming on to the substance, what's a heat network? We've got quite a shift across the whole of the UK in policy, owing to the decisions to look at heat networks as a priority technology for taking heat from multiple sources as a route to decarbonisation, net zero, etc. And the basis of this is that the assumption is that this will be the lowest cost, low carbon solution for decarbonising heat. So there's strong evidence, as many of you are representatives of organisations and political areas that are well aware of this opportunity historically, and are actually have got city scale heat networks that are using multiple sources incredibly successfully for both decarbonisation, economic success, and social value, as Hamish was just talking about. The outcome of the legislative change is anticipated by the UK government to be an enormous rise in investment. Hamish also mentioned Vattenfall, that you're probably aware that they're significantly involved with Bristol in the UK on developing a major heat network in that space. And investors are taking a close interest in heat network opportunities across the UK, with the opportunity, therefore, for all of you, that mine energy and other geothermal energy schemes could become integrated into that. So there's a huge potential opportunity with the current situation, market-wise, market share-wise, being that. I think the target actually is lifted to 20%, but you get the point. And I thought I'd bring a clear example into play here. This is a zone that we have created for Sheffield. I say we because I'm working on the programme, the national programme with the government. We were actually designating the zones in Sheffield, Stoke and Peterborough with our partners from the Netherlands, Bitterveen and Boss. And this is, that's an outline area of in Sheffield. Well, that covers the whole of the city centre and the whole of the Don Valley. Those of you that are familiar with the South Yorkshire area, that effectively is all of the old industrial area, pushing towards Rotherham in the northeast of the map, and then down towards the Peak District in the southwest. So effectively, that is the principal zone in Sheffield that has been designated. You can find it on the DESNZ website. So it is the basis on which, inside that, buildings that are required to connect, and there are the businesses that are required to connect, as we understand it under the legislation. The benchmark for a building required to connect in the UK pilot project, so it's not defined yet. Let me make that clear. It's not defined formally yet. But our working number is 100 megawatt hours a year, which you'll be aware is, I don't know, about 8 houses worth, something like that, as a sort of eight terraced or semi houses approximately on energy demand. So although it is larger than the domestic level on an individual house basis, it is not large in terms of potential building size. So it covers an awful lot of those buildings. And that outline in the middle is a bit sort of hot off the press. That's a network that we're developing for the advanced zoning program in Sheffield. So opportunities. I mean, a lot of things we've talked about this morning and yesterday, and we always talk about with the technical side. Of course, to make mine energy schemes work, with including attaching them to heat network zones and all that legislation I've just talked about, a lot of it's to do with obviously requires electricity. I always bring a slide like this up and try and keep these updated. This is relatively recent data from one single source, so the HEPI and VARSET index, which is, to be fair, just on residential pricing of gas and electricity in different locations. But you can see the difference. I mean, this is where a lot of our commercial challenges fit in mine energy schemes. It isn't the technical, as we're hearing very clearly from the expertise that's on display through the symposium. But when you know, if those factors, say commercially on gas and electricity was spun for Sweden, was spun into the UK, put those into your commercial models. You know, that might produce an interesting result. Now, you know, again, coming to Hamish's point, we can't suddenly whack gas prices up to 32 pence a kilowatt hour, obviously, but it gives some indication of, you know, where a lot of the challenge fits with this. And what's going to happen in the future? Well, again, I've used the Common Index Statista from 2025. There is an expectation that gas prices are going to rise, and there is an expectation that electricity prices are going to fall. So it's an interesting conundrum as to how do you plan for that? You know, everyone putting a commercial model together has got to run on what's the situation today. It's no good just thinking, well, it's going to be different in the future, because we can't be absolutely sure, obviously. And then, of course, lots of opportunities, as we've already heard about, and existing projects that are showing success. Sophie referenced the 25% and so on, which obviously is a huge opportunity for mine energy. I thought I'd just drop this in because I've been working on supporting getting mine energy schemes going for some time, and this was taken at an event I organised at the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre. I don't know, I think it's about 2018, I think. But I ran across it the other day, and I thought some of you with very fond memories of Jez Crooks in particular would be pleased to see that. And the point that this works. There are plenty of places around the world that demonstrate that you can have multiple sources of heat. This doesn't demonstrate mine energy, but it's from Helsingborg, and where multiple different sources, high temperature, low temperature, are integrated into a city scale network. They didn't go for zoning. They didn't go for this kind of rather unusual approach for Britain to top down it and say, you will be required to connect. Be clear, that's what the legislation is going to say. Buildings will be required to connect under zoning legislation. So it's a challenge, but it was a more iterative a process in other countries in response to market conditions at the last energy crisis that I happen to remember. Most of you won't, but in the late 60s and 70s. We're making a contribution towards the development of mine energy schemes. I think many of you are aware of that, to a toolkit which is a kind of as Matt was talking about in the last presentation, getting tools together that can help non-specialists understand routes to developing schemes, and this is very much designed along those ways, but of course taking a lot of the expertise from people that are in this symposium as well as others into the technical side, so there's some insights into that, but it's a starter point for if you to have a look at, to help you guide you through mine energy schemes. And that's the point, isn't it? It's the point of how do we make all of our energy resilient, supporting both economic, social goals, as well as taking individual technical opportunities from something like mine energy. So there we go. Thank you very much.